to live under a barbaric rule like Hamas that would put on a show like that is to be cursed. To be so morally
Then
depraved
Israel's
is its
10,000
own
times more cursed.
punishment. And I think that is the point here, Piers. This is the beginning of the end, not just of Hamas, but of the left that defended them. Because, you know, the left thinks Israel is the Palestinians' curse. It is the left who have cursed the Palestinians with their support, because they are prolonging the moral depravity that has earned the disgust of every good human being on planet Earth.
Batya goes off like a firecracker on Piers Morgan Uncensored show, but here's the kicker. She's firing in just one direction. She watches Hamas parade around Israeli bodies and launches into a sermon about curses and the moral decay of anyone who dares to support the Palestinian cause. But hold up, Cenk isn't buying the one-sided outrage. You'll see. He swoops in like a wrecking ball, dropping the uncomfortable facts about, you really want to talk about curses? Dave Smith, to the far top right, who seems like the only one in the room realizing how insane it is to turn dead children into political scoreboards. He points out the very real biases at play. The hypocrisy today is on full display. Let's jump into it.
And I am so grateful that my government, Donald Trump, the United States of America, stands with the Jewish people against such pure, absolute evil, because it truly is going to be a new era. There is no going back from a parade celebrating the mutilated, strangled bodies of babies.
Okay, Cenk?
Yeah, so what Hamas did is so stupid, and I totally agree that it's immoral. But are we ever going to talk about the 15,000 dead children that Israel slaughtered? You want to talk about cursed? If you think the Palestinians are cursed because of 36 children killed during October 7th, how cursed is Israel for the 15,000 children that they slaughtered? They crushed their skulls. They lit them on fire. They destroyed and killed tens of thousands of children. And now you're saying, oh my God, because I see one with my own eyes, that's Israeli. Oh, the Israeli lives are worth, what, 10,000 Palestinian children? 100,000 Palestinian? Is there any number of Palestinian children that you would have any sympathy for? So screw Hamas, but that does not justify Israel slaughter after slaughter after slaughter and go, oh yeah, Hamas made me do it. Hamas didn't make you do it. Israel is reveling in it. It is now a terrorist state. It's rolling tanks into the West Bank. They've taken Trump's ridiculous plan in Gaza as a green light. And of course, this was all arranged ahead of time. That's why Netanyahu supported Trump. That's why Trump got $337 million from the Adelson family. So now they're rolling tanks into the West Bank to slaughter more Palestinian children. So I hate that both sides are doing this, and I hate that Israel is doing it 15,000 times more, because that's how many more babies they've killed and children that they've killed than the one that the entire U.S. and Western media is focused on. Can we not see that when it's an Israeli baby, that the whole world is like, this is the most important thing in the world? But I don't mind that 1%. But then don't tell me that 15,000
How many parades were there in Israel celebrating the casualties in Gaza? I mean, how many parades were there of Israelis celebrating the dead
more slaughter in Gaza?
All right, let me bring in Dave Smith. Let me bring in Dave.
Yeah, well, because I actually think, listen, but first off, let me just say, I almost, look, that was sickening, that video, the reports of what was done to these hostages, and I don't know that all this evidence has actually been released, and we'll maybe find out at some point, but it's all sickening and horrible, and I hate to even use it to then try to win a political argument after it. I mean, it is, look, there is no questioning, it is sickening to see like a big crowd celebrating these things. I do think, like, Batya, you make a fair point. It's like, yeah, okay, we don't exactly see the same type of kind of primitive brutality on the Israeli side. There is this tremendous bias, though, I think, toward I don't know exactly how to say this. It's like a more an anti-barbaric bias. So if Hamas runs in and is just gunning down random people, there's something where that triggers a certain reaction out of something, whereas, collateral damage or targeted strikes don't trigger that same response from people. The thing is that, like, if it's your kid on the side of that collateral damage, it probably feels awfully similar. And so when you ask, like, oh, are there parades where, for, say, like, Israeli hostages or prisoners or whatever they want to call them? No, I have seen Israeli politicians as well as American politicians signing the bombs, including Nikki Haley, before they get launched into Gaza. I don't know. I mean, I find that pretty sickening also. And like, to Cenk's point, there is just like a certain, don't get me wrong, okay? I'm trying to like be as charitable to you as I can. I would rather be next door neighbors with like an IDF soldier than a Hamas militant, okay? Like, there is a difference between the two. But when you're talking about the level of human suffering that Israel has inflicted on the people who were not members of Hamas, who were probably more victims of Hamas than anyone in Israel was, on larger numbers at least. There is just like, I'm sorry, it does seem after a while, like a lot, as I say all the time, a lot of the people on the pro-Israel side just value Israeli life more than they do Palestinian life. And that is your right. That is your right. I understand, I value my children's life more than I value other children's lives. That's okay, that's my right. It's not reasonable for me to require the law or politicians to value my children's life more than other children's lives.
Okay.
And I think that's the essence of
let me bring in. I want to ask General Kimmett.
Can I just respond
hang on.
Piers?
Well, very quickly. Yeah, we're running out of time.
Very quickly, Dave. The whole of our civilization is based on the difference between barbaric physical violence inflicted by one human against another and the kind of collateral damage that tragically happens from justified warfare, as long as it is proportionate. Now, we could debate that. We have debated the question of proportion.
But
the entire
Batya,
Western civilization is based on that distinction.
Batya, I have Batya from the start of this war. Hang on one second. Hang on. I have said from the start of this war that there were two things that really concerned me. One was proportionality. Right? We know that 1,200 people were killed on October the 7th, and another 7,000 were wounded. But 1,200 were killed, of whom a smallish, relatively smallish number were children. What we've seen, and obviously 250 more were kidnapped, including horrendously a baby and other children, and that was all horrific. And anyone who thinks otherwise, I have no time for. But I always said one or two things. Well, what is proportionate? And it seemed to me about the middle of last year, I began to sense that this was just getting grotesquely disproportionate. But mainly because I didn't see that the end game was going to be successful. The end game was supposed to be the eradication of Hamas, a terror group. There is no sign that they are eradicated. And in fact, US intelligence, and I'll come to General Kimmett here about this, the US intelligence reports about a week ago suggested that for every Hamas terrorist who's been killed, they've already been replaced by people with similar ideology. So my fear was always that a disproportionate response by Israel would actually fuel the ideology behind Hamas, make them more popular, not less. And that in the process, we've seen, as Cenk said, 15,000 children reported now to be killed. And that's just, whatever you try and say by justification, it is unjustified to kill that number of children. It just is, isn't it?
Well, I think we're having a little bit of historical myopia here. Maybe I'm just kind of old to remember the fact that we had 3,000 Americans killed on December 7th, 1941 by the Japanese. And by the end of the war, we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I suspect there were probably about 150 to 250,000 children that were incinerated in that attack alone. So I think that we are perhaps forgetting our own history and what we have done in a scenario of total war for the United States, for Great Britain, and for Western Europe. And candidly, I think it was the right thing to do because it was total war to destroy the Japanese leadership and the Japanese empire. The Jewish state, Israel, believes they're at total war with those terrorist groups. But you're absolutely right, Piers. Not only was Hamas celebrating that, but remember today, Hezbollah was celebrating the death of Hassan Nasrallah, and it sure looked like there were a lot of Hezbollah operators still fighting. It's the terrorist calculus. Kill one, create two. But in terms of the notion of, number one, the Israeli response to the Hamas attack on October 7th, they see it as total war. They are fighting as if it is total war, the same way America did the same in 1941 to 1945 against the Japanese alone. We lost 3,000. They lost 1 million. We dropped 2 nuclear weapons on Japan.
Yeah, I think you make very good points. Joe Walsh, final word to you.
I don't think so.
Okay, we've run out of time, sadly, but Joe, final word to you.
Just real quickly, I agree with Batya. The ideology, the hatred of Jews was there before October 7th. The belief that Israel does not have a right to exist was there before October 7th. It didn't need October 7th to go off the charts. There will never be peace in this region as long as the Palestinian people, Pierce, not just Hamas, do not believe Israel has a right to exist. Period.
But there will also never be.
It's just nonsense.
There will also
Palestine
never be.
Doesn't exist. When is it going to get through your thick heads that Palestine doesn't exist because of the murderous terrorist state of Israel? How many slaughtered children do you need before you say, oh, right, the Palestinians don't exist? And are the Palestinians in the middle of that slaughter as 15,000 of their children were lit on fire by Israel? Are they supposed to love Israel? Is that the ludicrous, insane demand? Oh, you don't love us enough. We're going to kill more of your children. No,
well,
this is all of that's just propaganda.
I think the bottom line is
the Mongols killed 800,000 people in Baghdad because it was all-out war. That doesn't mean Israel should do it. That doesn't mean the U.S. should do it today.
You only get to peace when the Palestinian people have the same rights, human rights, as everybody else around them, and that has been the running saw in this conflict. And you can make a great argument for both sides throughout the 75 years. But the one, to me, unarguable point is that Palestinians in Gaza in particular have been living with diminished human rights to their neighbors.
And just when you thought Piers was gonna sit there through the chaos, he actually surprises everyone by telling out the truce plan towards the end. Credit where it's due. He finally steps up and points out that, oh, I don't know, maybe not bomb children and flatten entire neighborhoods might be worth considering. Meanwhile, Cenk, love him or hate him, actually brings receipts laying bare the staggering numbers that make Batya's moral outrage look like a bad faith performance. And Batya, well, what can I say? She's over here preaching about curses like she's casting a biblical spell, while completely ignoring the fact that Israel's been dishing out destruction on a biblical scale. She wants to talk about parades, but conveniently forgets about Israeli politicians signing bombs like yearbook messages before they're sent to Gaza. Double standards? Oh, they're not just on display, they've got a whole light show. So what do you think? Do you think the media's outrage is selective, or are we supposed to ignore the 15,000 dead Palestinian children while focusing on one parade? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like and share, y'all. Hope to catch you on the next one.